Sir claims they're big claims, made by Trump. Of course he said I'll do it in one day. We've heard that umpty number of times, and the calls with Putin, after becoming president-elect, those have already started. They've just been reported. How do you feel Trump is going to make this happen if he is trying to do it to end the war between the two sides?
I think what Trump is trying to do is emulate Ronald Reagan. If you recall, Reagan was able to get the hostages and freed essentially the day he was inaugurated. Most of the work was actually done by the Jimmy Carter people, but it was Reagan who completed it. I think that's what Trump sort of has in mind. Obviously telling Zelensky that everything would stop in place means that Zelensky loses a good part of his eastern osts. But both Zelensky and Putin have something to worry about. Everybody knows what Zelensky wants to worry about, which is that Trump will stop supplying Ukraine with weapons. And, of course, now according to this report, Trump is dangling the prospect that he will continue to send weapons to Ukraine. But Putin also has something to worry about, and that is if Putin does not go along with pretty much what Trump asks for. Trump, being Trump, could turn around and essentially say, you didn't do what I wanted, therefore I will go ahead and support the Ukrainians far more even than Biden has. And I would point out that although Joe Biden will take about $4 billion from what's called Draw Down Authority and another $2 billion due from the special Ukrainian fund he's got, the money he can send it. What he hasn't yet said is that he would let the Europeans who want to send more equipment and allow the Europeans to essentially tell the Ukrainians, you can hit Russia wherever you want. It's difficult for them to do because many of these equipments have American components, and so Biden has a veto. Biden needs to lift that veto. The combination of doing that and is sending more equipment for $6 billion worth will make it a lot easier for Trump to pressure both sides.
While you have outlined what's at risk both for Putin and Zelensky, I just want to talk about Trump's Ukraine peace plan, which includes an 800-mile buffer zone by the European and the British soldiers and a 2-decade freeze on Ukraine's NATO ambitions. Basically, he wants Ukraine's neutrality in the ongoing war, and he also says, and as asks Zelensky to give up hopes of getting back Crimea. Keeping all this in mind, do you think that this is perhaps a viable path to peace or an appeasement that risks sacrificing European security? Because there is skepticism growing in Europe as to how European nations could continue supporting Ukraine without any kind of support, because Trump has clearly said that there would be no active combat of U.S. troops in the war zone.
Well, for a start, there isn't really much as combat right now in the war zone. The real issue is, does the United States continue to provide weapons, material what the Ukrainians need? And essentially what Trump is now saying is that he would be prepared to do so under certain conditions. Now the 800-mile buffer zone sounds pretty good. Not getting into NATO, let's be realistic. NATO has not invited Ukraine yet. They keep talking about it, but they haven't done it. What hasn't been mentioned is that Ukraine could join the EU, which by the way has its own defense provisions Putin might go along with. That be if in fact Ukraine reaches some kind of economic arrangement with Russia that allows Russia essentially to sell to the EU and would get sanctions lifted. There are lots of things still that have to be worked out after all said and done. We're all talking about a report in a newspaper that has not been fully confirmed, and in any event has a lot of details missing. But what Trump is trying to do is essentially to model Ronald Reagan and say, indeed, on my first day of office I will have reached some kind of arrangement between both Ukraine and Russia, the way Reagan was able to reach an arrangement with Iran to get the hostages out.
Mentioned something very pertinent here, that is the European angle, and I wanted you to just take it a little further from there. My point here being, do you feel Europe would be watching all of Trump's actions and his claims and his all that he's proposing with a lot of caution at this point? And we have already seen, we've got those feelers from Europe already. The summit which is going on France, the president, of course, Macron, he mentioned something in his tweet. What about European security? When you take that and you see Trump is proposing that he'll have a buffer zone and have European soldiers standing face to face with Russia there, or at least in close quarters in because there are no US troops there, European soldiers, standing in front and us only backs from behind, so it actually pushes Europe more into the face of Russia. So even if Russia agrees to this, do you feel Europe would agree if this is the peace term?
Well, I think the Europeans obviously would have to have a say in all of this, and I suspect that the European position would be that Trump dropped all his objections to NATO, that the United States continue to play the role it has always played since the creation of NATO back in 1949, and that there be a clear assurance that if their troops are there, that the United States would come to the aid of the Europeans if Putin shoots at them. The only way that happens, of course, is if the United States is fully committed to its NATO allies, so there'll have to be a quid pro quo, not just with Russia and Ukraine but with the Europeans. There's no way the European Macron is right. There's no way the Europeans are going to do anything along the lines of what Trump wants, unless they get something in return. And what they want in return is the American security guarantee that's always been there, and that has to be ironclad. Mr. Zuckham, very quickly, one last reaction I wanted from you. What do you feel Elon Musk was doing on that call between Trump and Zelensky, as reports are suggesting? Well, Elon Musk, after all said and done, did help Zelensky out, and then he stopped with the Starlink satellite connections. Zelensky owes Trump Musk, and I suspect that Trump brought Musk in as a subtle message to Zelensky that if Zelensky is not willing at least to consider Trump's proposal, he may have problems getting support from Musk. Obviously, Musk is the world's richest man. He has a lot of clout. He has all sorts of ways to make life even more miserable for the Ukrainians if he wanted to. Alternatively, he could be very helpful to them. Look, Trump is nobody's fool. People have underestimated, as they say, that he changes his mind overnight, or he's very transac. That may be true, but that doesn't mean he's a fool, and that doesn't mean he doesn't know how to negotiate, and he definitely wants to demonstrate that he is a master negotiator, and in fact would very much like to get the Nobel Peace Prize that Theodore Roosevelt got for making peace between Japan and Russia in the late 19th century. Thanks for watching this video.